The next aspect of our work that I want to speak with you about is to do with what we call vocal hygiene. So, not something that may not always come up, and it is something that you will encounter in your daily life, especially when you're doing a lot of speaking, and that is that you have to care for the voice. So the number one thing that I always say is you want to make sure that you get rest, that you're sleeping, so if you're sleeping well, that you're eating well, that you're taking care of yourself in terms of stress management. So some of the exercises that we do, like breathing and meditation, will help with that. And then also that you're drinking enough water. So water is our best friend as speakers. I will constantly drink water, especially if I'm going to be doing a lot of speaking. Because what happens is that, number one, you want to be hydrated. But what happens is that if you're doing a lot of speaking, you're pushing air through your vocal folds. And those particular folds, need a lot of lubrication. So there's many things that we do throughout the day that actually take away from that lubrication. Some of those things may be that we're drinking coffee in the morning and we are drinking milk products. And milk products can cause a lot of phlegm. And phlegm, and if you have a cold, for example, that weighs, the phlegm is actually weighing on the folds and taking away its natural lubrication. So if you are someone who drinks coffee in the morning and have milky products, then you definitely want to make sure that you're drinking enough water to help flush any excess phlegm that might be hanging out and taking away natural lubrication from those folds. Other things that we do, possibly on a daily basis, that will also damage those cords and not put them exactly where we want them, is, for example, smoking. Smoking, I always tell actors and people who do a lot of public speaking when they ask me, should I quit smoking? Of course you should quit smoking. But if you are going to be doing a big speech and you are a smoker, kind of the last thing you really want to do is to stop smoking, because then it might cause all other problems for you in terms of losing your voice, in terms of causing more stress. I just say be careful. Know that if you're smoking, you want to maybe smoke a little less. Don't smoke right before you're going to do a big speech, and make sure to drink excess water to combat, because smoke, again, will go into the throat and it will take away the lubrication. And when we don't have enough lubrication, that's when we get those things called nodes, or we just even get little calluses on the folds. And that's what ends up making it so that we lose our voice. We also lose the depth and clarity of our voice if we're not hydrated enough and we don't have that natural lubrication. So you want to watch out for that. Other things that damage the cords are if we're speaking too much in our larynx. We're using our voice box and our folds to do the work rather than allowing our whole body to be engaged in projecting our voice. So watch where you are speaking. It's something to keep in mind. You also want to vary your speaking. So you'll often hear me, I'm like, oh, I'm up in my head voice, or oh, I'm down lower, or I just move my voice a lot. I take time to breathe, to make sure I have proper breath support for my speaking. I will also make variations in the sound, the pace. I'll change the pace. I will suddenly emphasize a word, etc. So that I'm not always speaking with like one or two areas of range in tone. I'm varying it so that I'm not doing a lot of damage and asking the same chords folds to be moving in the same way. It's also helpful because it helps with the listener, making it more engaging. It helps with emphasis. It helps people to understand what you're saying and also to feel the intention behind what you say by varying your voice. So With the water, I would carry water with you at all times. Yes, some people are big believers that it shouldn't be too cold because, it's an instrument that is muscular. You're using muscles, and if any time you go in the cold, then your muscles retract. So you want to make sure that it's pretty. It doesn't have to be super hot or anything like that. Lukewarm water's fine. If you need it to be a little cooler, that's fine. It shouldn't be too cold, is my point. The other thing is to note before your event that you're speaking at, or going to be doing a lot of speaking, you want to check that you are peeing clear. That's a great indication that you're well hydrated and ready for what you're about to do with your voice. So make sure to pee clear, and make sure that you always have water on hand. Never assume, if you're going to a big speaking event, that they're going to definitely have water for you. I have been in situations where that's not the case. And again, if you're speaking for long periods of time and you're not hydrating and you're not clearing the throat and helping it to lubricate again, you're going to start losing your voice. And it's very embarrassing when it happens in the moment of public speaking, but then it can happen afterwards, and then let's say you have to speak the next day, and it's just a horrible thing to experience when you are a public speaker. So my recommendation is water. And finally, I must add that alcohol is part of our consideration of vocal hygiene. So alcohol, again, is damaging, will strip the cords, and definitely if you're out with a bunch of people it's not so much smoky clubs anymore. I remember when it was, and that was so damaging because you're drinking alcohol and you're in these smoky clubs. It's just ripe for damaging the voice. Not so much anymore, since most places are non-smoking. However, what does happen is if you're in a social engagement and it's allowed, you'll tend to speak louder. And then what happens is not only are you speaking louder and you're trying to overcome the music in the background of the other people speaking, but you're drinking that glass of wine or you're having your gin and tonic. And again, alcohol is just stripping the cords. So my recommendation to you is not to say, oh, don't go out and have any fun, but definitely keep in mind you're going to be speaking the next day. What's the damage that you're going to do? Can you handle that? Probably not. So I would say that you want to have a glass of alcohol and a big old glass of water with you at the same time, so that as you're drinking your wine, you then are also drinking a lot of water to help flush the folds. And again, you want to not overdo it. Maybe if you would normally be out with friends and have 2 glasses of wine, now you're only going to have that 1 glass of wine. And if you're going to do a lot of speaking the next day, maybe you don't even do that. So it is a consideration, and it's something that we have to bear in mind, but it will help you in the long run, trust me.